Let him get over there.
Nobody puts Donnie in the corner.
Gray hair. I mean, no gray. Yeah.
I'm now his right-hand man.
We're all looking for him.
All right, we're on. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Public Services and Facilities Committee meeting, 9 a.m., Tuesday, September 10th, 2024, and acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. That just got really loud. Up first, we have citizens' comments. Citizens' comments?
No one has signed up.
No citizens' comments. Approval of the meeting minutes from August 20th of 2024.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Old business, discussion from Trident and MPS for the City Hall renovations and relocation options. And we have some handouts here, and who's running this show?
John, yes, from Trident. As you all recall, the last time, a couple months ago, we had Trident and MPS present some alternatives to the relocation alternative and renovation for the City Hall. And the committee asked for a little bit more detail about the two alternate locations that we discussed, being connecting it to the public safety building or a standalone building in the large parking lot that the city owns on Front Beach. So there's just a little bit more information, a little bit more detail associated with those renderings that we wanted to present to you all. This would complete, I believe, John, the second deliverable from Trident and MPS. So it would require some action, of some sort, if it's the will of the committee to move forward with any of these options or any new ones for this project. So. Cool.
Yes, that's
John?
correct.
All right, thank you.
So John Edward with Trident Construction here, and MPS with Brian, Michelle, and Lauren are all present. What I tried to do here is combine in a summary form all of the options we have looked at. And so on kind of the third page are the three new options at the back that we were asked to look into last meeting. And that is the public safety infill site, kind of in the back corner of the public safety building. And then the Lot B options, we provide two options over there on Lot B. And along with these are some pricing to go with it based on the designs and the looks that MPS worked on. Now, I will make note that Brian and his team have worked on some alternate designs as well. These are all based on square footage numbers, right? And so, the original programming from earlier was, 11 to 12,000 square feet. This one's at like 15,000. So there's some tweaks, and we can shrink and adjust and look at the actual footprints as needed to adjust the cost. If that makes any sense. And then, so
Can
that's.
you explain what's driving the increase in the square footage when you're going through it?
So
Not right now, when you're ready.
Right. And I think some of it's just the layout and kind of the transactional spaces, making sure we can try and reduce those and get those as efficient as possible. But do we have the other page, another look? Do we want to look at?
We have another slide deck we can pull up there, but in general, in terms
So
of.
Brian, let me get you on the mic.
In general, the square footage that we talk about increase relates to the building will function more efficiently, and you can kind of see this in all three of the designs. If we have one floor that can accommodate all of the city services, and another floor that can accommodate all of the council chamber, courtroom, event space, sport and meeting spaces, things like that. So that's kind of where those numbers are now. There's obviously options to decrease those, but we started with what is the most efficient in terms of functionality, with square footage being a little bit secondary to that. But obviously what you're seeing here aren't fully worked out floor plans. We haven't gone in depth with the city in terms of what their needs are. This is our assumptions, kind of somewhat working in a vacuum from what our past experience says for spaces.
And so I think the best path forward would be to look at a site selection, a preferred site selection, and then we could dive into, okay, what does the budget want to look like? What does the square footage want to look like? And meet those needs around that site and those parameters.
So you're, the first question is where we would like, what's our first choice for where to put this building? I mean, is that,
Yes, ma'am.
any thoughts?
I mean, I'm very much a proponent of the, what y'all call the public safety infill site. There's just going to be a synergy of having everybody in one space. It allows us to share space as necessary, and it frees up this for something else, whether we sell it, whether we make it into whatever we make it into. I think there's going to be some pushback from our residents in this area if we build a new building or substantially expand this area, because we back up to a residential area. So, I mean, for all those reasons, I'm very much a proponent of the public safety site.
What is this, where we're sitting right now, zoned?
Limited commercial, LC.
I'm just kind of wondering what we'd get for it if we sold it.
You all,
How big is it?
you all control, it wouldn't be unusual for, you all control the zoning, so if there was something more appropriate in y'all's minds, I mean, that could be part of the.
How big is this
Sure.
piece of property?
The lot itself? Not the building, the lot?
The lot, yeah.
I can pull it
Maybe
up.
10,000-ish would be my guess.
I bet it's more than that. That'd be a quarter acre. It's got to be.
It's gotta
bigger than
be
that, I would think.
half.
Because our existing building is 8,000.
It's gotta be
Oh,
at
it's up and
least a
down.
half an
That's-
acre.
Oh, that's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
That's true.
I can get it real quick.
I mean, because that's,
Yeah, I mean, but I can't,
if we sold
I
this,
bet maybe more like 20,000 or somewhere in half to three-quarter acre would be my guess on a footprint.
I mean,
You're talking right
including-
out to the road here?
whatever,
Yeah.
it's this piece of property.
Yeah.
to
it
the,
would
to
be
the
right.
access road, not.
Yeah, not to, not,
connect-
not
Yeah.
the public works, yeah.
So we had an appraisal done of the building, but that's the building only, not the land.
Not the land, yeah.
Right, and that was at like 1.75, I think.
Wasn't
I
much.
feel like the land is probably worth,
Yeah, the land's probably triple that.
yeah,
I mean, this would be a scrape job for anybody.
yes.
Chair, just a suggestion, I think, I thought you were going to say something different when you said about, we'll hear pushback from the community. I think over the last couple of weeks, months, since the city has started discussing this project and the need, there's been some questions about the need and why is the city considering building a new building and maybe relocating it? And, is it something that the city really needs? And certainly when we start looking at the list of priorities that the city has, it's something that council will have to face. But I don't know if it would be helpful for the committee or for the public listening and interested in this to revise and review the condition of the building and why the committee, sort of hasn't really made a recommendation, but it's exploring the idea of replacing with a new building, whether it's off-site or existing site. All of those options are depicted in the document that you have in front of you, what it would take to renovate the existing building without any additions and the cost and some of the pros and cons. And maybe it would be beneficial to review that. One, is it still the committee's position that we should be exploring a new building regardless of where it's situated, and maybe have John go through some of the building assessments and the condition of our existing building and some of the challenges with
Yeah, I
that.
mean, this,
Before we do that, I wouldn't mind just playing, I would like to tack on to what Blair was saying about the location first and just get my comment out on that. I'm totally against renovating this building. I think that's a big waste of money. I think the contractors have indicated that either directly or indirectly that. Is up, I'm out of time? My 1 minute is up. I couldn't get behind renovating this building, putting another dollar into it. It's an old building, it's built like a house. If anybody were to come in and buy the lot, they'd scrape this. I think the question, so I'm kind of with Blair on either going over to the public safety building or, if we're gonna do something, let's not waste our money renovating this bag of bones. Let's put something new here. You wouldn't put a new veneer on this body, and I'll just use that as the example. It would be a big waste of money. So, to getting back to the priorities, I think you know how I feel about budgeting right now. I think drainage, I think beach, I think roads. I think we've got 10 priorities in front of a new building. I think this building is functional. I think we've got other options, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't preclude at some point. In my opinion, if the money ever did come up or we got grants, we're spending some time exploring what we have for options in the future here. But, this is a perfectly functional, albeit maybe not optimal, building. But to spend, looking at this plus financing costs anywhere between $8 to $12 million on a venture right now when we don't have other things figured out how we're going to finance them, I think is a little bit of a folly. So that's my 2 cents here.
I think the only problem with that is that this building that we're sitting in is going to start to have actual money that we have to spend on it. Right, I mean, the elevator, for
we've been
example, is.
deferring maintenance for several years, so, we wouldn't have to do the entire laundry list that's in Trident's upgrade options, but we would have to spend
Sooner.
$500,000 to $1 million in just kind of repairing this building.
Sooner
to
rather
get
than
it through.
later, something is going to happen that's going to cause us to have to spend a considerable amount of money on this building. And that's my concern, is that we get to a point where we're forced to put money into this. And I mean, and that's one of those things that nobody can really say when exactly. I don't think these things will happen, but from what I recall from y'all's analysis of this building, between the HVAC, the building envelope, the roof, the windows, the elevator, those are all big ticket items that are probably getting to the end of their useful life. Is that,
That's correct.
yeah. So.
We haven't, again, we've kind of intentionally been deferring, putting a lot of money just in maintenance into this building. So I would say if council is of a mind to delay more than, kind of moving rapidly forward with a new building, I think we'd have to start putting money into this building. Banisters are coming apart, roof is leaking, elevators trapping people in it. So
what's the problem?
The floor in the building department is
yeah, floors are kind of,
rotting.
so it needs significant attention if there's anything other than kind of fast tracking one of the Trident options.
And so that's where I keep coming back to. I mean, if we, we look at these prices and these dollar signs look like a lot of money, but if you add another, you're saying $1 million, which means that by the time we actually do it, it'll be $2 million.
You don't
So-
trust my numbers?
No, I'm saying any construction job, especially remediation
Not me.
repair job is always a lot more than you think it's gonna be. And so now we're looking at $2 million. And so now you can just add 2 million to any of these. And I have a hard time stomaching that. I mean, I'm not really excited about spending a bunch of the city's money on something that we don't need, but we have to, this building serves a very important function for the island. We have to have it. You know, we're not gonna have city council meetings outside, and we're not gonna have the building department, you know, in a trailer. So, you know, I just think we're getting to the point where we're gonna have to do something.
I would suggest that this committee pick, say, two different options, and let's let full council make a decision as to when we do something. I mean, that's not for us to do anyway, and from my perspective, the only two options that really make a lot of sense is either the public safety infill site or doing something on Lot B. Because otherwise, we're going to be putting city into trailers for whatever else we may do. And either the city business is going to be in trailers, or public works is going to be in trailers for the other options for probably 2 years. And that's going to be very cumbersome, and we don't know where it's going to be. We've got all these other options. And consolidating us in the business district, what I would call it though, the Front Beach district, makes a lot of sense because it just puts all the departments closer together.
I'd support the infill site. I think that's,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
that's your number one.
Yeah.
I think I like that one the most too.
So we can
Katie.
do that in punt.
If I could,
That would be my, yeah, I'm with you on the other thing too. I think that conversation about when and where and how is a council decision.
back to your previous question about the lot size, it's 0.63 acres, and this current property is split up into 3 parcels, but totaling 0.63 acres.
A little over half an acre.
Sky, you were right on.
Mm-hmm.
20, it
Well
says
done.
22,000 or something like that.
Square feet, yeah.
I mean, you
You
could,
didn't see me walking a lot out of the meeting. No, I was I was pacing it out.
and I mean, it could be turned into a commercial,
We could do a long-term lease, finance the other building, use the lease here to help pay for financing. We can sell it. We can do all kinds of
All
things.
kinds of ideas, yeah.
Yeah.
should we look into, before we take this to the rest of council, should we look into those options for money making, you know, to soften the blow of whatever this, that we go with? I mean, to say that, okay, we could, I mean, talk to a real estate person and see what we could make off this?
I mean, in my mind, government moves very slowly. So why not go on and punt this now to full council, and at the same time, we can look at other options for this building at a later date.
Yeah, and I do have one more request on the numbers. I think this is great, the way you've got this laid out. I'd like to see what the city total all-in financed cost would be. So in other words, we were looking at borrowing the money on this. So if we got options where, you know, if we were to finance this, that 8 million becomes 11 or 12 or whatever the number is based on current interest rates. So I think it would be helpful because that's going to have to get funded either out of general fund money or through some kind of a debt assessment. So I think that would be helpful for us.
And I think that's a valid point, something we and MPS can help with too, from a soft cost. You know, this doesn't have your furniture number, stuff like that.
Turnkey, what would it cost us?
Right.
And including the
Pro
financing.
forma.
Yeah, that would be helpful. That would be really helpful.
And as a government entity, we have the ability to issue a bond as well, right?
We do.
Yes, sir.
And the question is, do we finance that through general funds, or do we do a tax assessment for the bonding to the taxpayers?
And so remind me of the square footage, the original square footage that we had said that we needed as a city was how many square feet?
Just under 12,000, right
Okay.
at 12,000 square feet.
And our existing building is 8,000, so it would be an addition of about 4,000.
So basically 12,000 is what we would.
And you, I guess to add on to that, given that the island is for the most part built out, you don't see the city needing 10 years from now more space.
I believe that in the 12,000, it includes some spaces that could be converted to office space, but about maybe two spaces.
But
So,
my point is, we're not in a growth mode, the
No.
city, yeah.
Yeah.
So whatever we do ought to be good for a long, long time.
Yeah, and I would think
We
with
think.
technological advances, a lot of what we do can be automated
could be.
without. I mean, I don't know, I would think that we might be going the other way.
making the building smaller?
No, in other words, requiring less, I mean, the interaction is becoming, I mean, with more automation and doing a lot of things online, you don't need to come to the, we don't need to have as much, and I'm fast forwarding 5-10 years from now.
But we're not gonna outgrow this, like, Lucy Beck.
No, we're not, yeah, we're not gonna outgrow
We're not
it,
gonna
for
be adding
sure.
trailers in
But we
in
might
2
want to
years.
consider those
Correct.
opportunities to look at what the office space is today versus what we might need down the road. We might need less down the road.
And does that include, I know we had talked at one point about leasing some space to the waterworks. Is that number included in that? It's not.
It's not in the 12,000 square footage, no. And most of that, it's bigger council chambers, conference room for council chambers, and
That's right.
municipal court, and essentially the same we have in terms of office space plus 2.
Plus 2. Yep.
Okay.
I do think that from talks with the design group, that the infill site, which we also like, but it is, I mean, it's obviously the tightest constraint. I mean, you're fitting into that remaining triangle or rectangle of space. I do think that it's the most constricted of them, but, I mean, to y'all's points, I think it would be adequate. It would suit our needs for many years, but there's kind of not any room to squeeze out at any corner, I don't think, with the way that site lays out.
Yeah, I don't think you could go any bigger than our, the 15, it's right about 15,000 square feet, 15, 16.
Unless we went higher.
Unless you went higher, that's correct. Because right now, we're figuring like 2 stories as to not impede the roof and the firefighter's balcony.
Well, if we've got 8 now, that's pretty much a double, so we ought to be okay, I would hope.
The only challenge too to think about that, if this option going with public safety building is if in the future the city wants to add more police officers, more firefighters, who knows? I mean, we added 6 firefighters, paramedics last year, this year. Then they wouldn't have any space to build out if, between the next 20, 30 years that becomes a need, then we would be constrained other than going up with that option. So that's really the only thing. It would really constrain everybody at that point. We may not need it, but if we do,
Right,
that
right.
would be a challenge.
But we would have, I mean, there are ways to get around that with going up or using the fire department on 41st or, right? I mean, expanding that or, I mean.
Correct.
So do we need a motion or anything, or just, do we want to just communicate up to the council that if we are going to at some point go forward with this, our preference from the committee is the infill site?
I don't think a motion is
I think-
necessary. I would
We're
say
good- are we
that
good with
we can bring this to the full council at the next workshop and maybe have John and MPS, Trident and MPS go through a high level, give them context of everything that has been looked at and all the options that were evaluated and the option that the committee was gravitating towards being the infill site. I think that would be helpful.
I do
for
think
them
that
to
if
get
we
it.
do that, it would probably be also helpful to bring back out y'all's, I think it was your first, your first proposal to us in which you went through the issues with this building. Because, I mean, that was what got me interested in the next step. Because I felt like pretty much every single aspect of this building, you all were saying that it's,
Stated.
Yeah.
It's very much so.
Yes.
In the nicest way to put it, yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to see from them before the next workshop, or do you all feel like this is pretty complete up to this point, it's in a good
I mean, the
place?
financing side
Other
of
than,
it,
we can do
and
that.
that's on us, yeah.
I think the all-in is a good,
We'll need the turnkey number from y'all.
I think we're good.
Anything else?
Do we want to
Sorry,
look at those other PDFs you brought, Brian? Put those up on the screen, or?
So we brought some, if this is interest to the group, we have more in-depth study of each of those options, so you could see some of the pros and cons of those.
Could you send those to us, or can we just maybe look at them on our,
I think they're in your packet.
oh, are they in there?
they're
Well,
not.
no, they may not, but,
These
I
are
can
new?
send them to you.
Oh,
Yeah.
I haven't seen
we
them.
can certainly get them to you.
Since we've kind of honed in on the infill site, what are the cons?
So the cons of the infill site, one are the parking lot would have to be regraded. We know there is a retaining wall in there, so there's some more site costs there than if you chose Lot B, which is, kind of a level, clean
Sure.
field. There would be some minor inconveniences to the fire department and the police during the year of construction that it's going to take for that. So there might be some utility disruptions, things like that. The EOC is in the way, on the second floor, is in the way of the expansion for that building. So you'd be building a new EOC as part of the scope of this. There'd also be some minor rework into the building. We're proposing to remove some of the restrooms at the north kind of entrance area to make that a little more grander approach. So there would be some, in addition to the new construction costs, there are some renovation costs associated with the project as well.
Okay.
And that's accounted for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the 1,700 square feet of renovation. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
You want to flip through these real quick?
Sure.
And send them?
The clicker is right.
Oh, I got it here. Okay, sorry.
Brian, you have to point it at her.
That's right.
There you go.
So, our proposal, and keep in mind, we're somewhat designing in a vacuum here without the input from the city, but generally what we're proposing is that we put all of the city office functions on the ground floor. There'd be one primary entrance to the building on the north side. That space would become more of a welcoming space without the bathrooms there. There would be a one-stop shop kind of gatekeeper position once you get into the administrative area. That would really help engage the public and be able for the city staff to funnel people to the appropriate people, whether it's permits or, all the different things that people would come to the building for. There would be space up front for a meeting room so that city staff could remain in the back part of the building doing their work and could come approach the public without disrupting the flow of the workday. It'll have some of the meeting spaces, small kind of huddle spaces that I think the city staff needs now. But generally, it's a self-contained unit on the first floor. On the upper floor, this is a two-story scheme. I know there's some talk that maybe we could do a third story. The reason we settled on a two-story scheme currently, and everything's up for discussion, but if we do a two-story scheme, you'll see this on the roof here a little bit. We can have a cleaner addition where we don't have to kind of mess with the roof that's there now. And we purposely didn't show you any 3D versions of this today, but it's much more in harmony with the building. A third story addition there looks, in our opinion, out of place, and it would create some complications with the existing roof lines. So that's something to keep in mind there. But basically, the second floor would be a public floor, and it would have all the things that the space we're in now is missing. It would have a room off the side for like a jury room or executive session room for council. There'd be room for a judge's office, and then a couple other meeting spaces, and the EOC would be up there. So, and it would also have a large porch that looks out towards Ocean Boulevard and the ocean. So that may make this more palatable for people to use as an event space for rental options.
Brian, if the city is not in need of the option for renting space, what changes would you do to maybe reduce some of the cost associated with that?
We might eliminate the balcony altogether. That's a good way to save some square footage.
Okay.
Right now, the scheme you're looking at is about 15,000 square feet. So if we needed to tighten our belt and get this down to 12, that might be one area we focus on. In addition to, you might lose a meeting room or an office or two in the process. But even if you don't rent it out, a small balcony could be a nice amenity, but it's not required. It's for the core functions of your government. It's a nice to have, not a need to have. The next site we looked at was on Lot B. We did two schemes on this one. One, this is a 3-story new construction scheme. On this one, we tried to put parking on the ground level to minimize the amount of spaces we lost. I think you're still going to net lose a couple spaces. It's hard to put a building there and not lose some spaces, but this would certainly minimize it. The other thing we did on this scheme is when we spoke last time, I think there was some thought that if there was a visitor center component on the ground floor, that there might be some grant or other funding to help this building. So there is space on the ground floor that would be used for that type of function. Also on this scheme, that we did not have in the other scheme, was an in-house fitness center. With the public safety site, we did not include the fitness center scope in it. There is some facilities there in the fire department already. But this one, on the ground floor, it's very easy to dedicate a small space for city staff to come in and out as they please without interrupting the daily functions of the rest of the building. And they can use it after hours pretty easily, too. Then above, this is this is a 3-story scheme. The second floor would be all of the city office components. So that would be a nice self-contained kind of unit. Everyone would be on the same floor, be able to collaborate better. Similar concept before, where it would have kind of a one-stop shop to help the public understand what people they need to talk to conduct their business. And then on the third floor, once again, it's the council chambers and all the support spaces for that. And this scheme has a rather large balcony there that is. It has a much nicer view of the ocean from there, and all the activity on Ocean Boulevard. But once again, that's a space that may not be needed, but perhaps in this space with the parking, it may be more advantageous as an event space. But if that's not a priority, then that's fine. It can still serve as a dual council chamber, courtroom, other governmental meetings.
And we did do that parking study. I don't know if all that got relayed in mid-July when you had court here. There were 51 cars out front here, kind of parked all over the place. Lot A was like 75% full. That's the little hockey stick behind public safety. And Lot B was only like 15% full. It was pretty empty. So from a parking standpoint, it looks like y'all have more than enough to accommodate.
Yeah, one thing that, and I think we've talked about this as well, but that this site is deed restricted by the South Carolina PRT. There was a grant that the city got to fund the purchase of the site. And we have been in contact with them about what it would take to, the deed restriction says it can only be used for parking. So any kind of change of use, construction of a building on that site would take coordination with them. We think we've kind of preliminarily heard back that we would have to basically offset any loss of parking either on the site or somewhere of equal use. So that, these options have that wrinkle in there, but I don't know, I don't think it's insurmountable, but it's a thing we'll have to deal with.
So obviously the third 3-floor scheme here is the most square footage. We did another scheme where we had a two-story scheme here to try to reduce that square footage a little bit. Ground floor would be all of the governmental office spaces, and then there'd be a second floor with a smaller balcony and the council chambers, courtroom, and all those types of support, smaller meeting spaces. This one does not offset any parking, so there'd be more spaces that would be required to be found other places. But it's a nice, clean construction. There'd be no disruption to obviously anybody in this building or the fire department or police department, any other people in the public safety building. And you wouldn't have the cost of redoing an EOC and some of that extra work in the existing building. But
I think the other pro here is just kind of anchor in that corner district of the business district.
The parking issue scares me. I feel like we're opening up a can of worms there that we probably don't need to open. I mean, if we didn't have any other options, I would say that, but I just feel like, to me, that's just not worth it. Do y'all agree with that?
I mean, I like other options in the future for that lot.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be a parking garage or whether it be a retail on the Ocean Boulevard side with parking above it so that you don't impact that. I mean, there are a lot of other things we could do with that rather than put City Hall right there on that spot. Or we just leave it like it is.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so we're good on either public safety infill site or nothing? Is that kind of where we are?
I mean, I guess, to me, public safety infill sites is 1+, and then 2 would be front lot, lot B.
Yeah.
All right.
Good?
Yeah.
All right.
So
Moving
John
right
and-
along.
Thank you.
John, Edward, and Brian.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
We'd be looking at October 15th for the next time that council will have a workshop. Other than the schedule for financing costs and all that, and the total in number that you'll give us.
Okay.
I think we're good with the information that we have so far to present to council.
All right,
And then,
perfect.
and then I think Katie's idea of kind of rehashing the issues with this building, because I guess that was part of, some people are gravitating towards just fixing this up, so I
Yeah.
think that point.
Think
so-
that
And
would be,
yeah, and if this is in the packet, I apologize, but for that infill option, can you also send us, maybe even, ahead of time, what is the footprint or and just the floor plan layouts? Kind of how you have it designated with the square footage, because I think we're still looking at doubling the square footage there. And that might give us some time ahead of time to think through maybe if there are some options or things that we may need or not need, or that are optional, nice to have, need to have. That'll give us.
it's 13,400, right?
Yep.
And originally we had said 12. We had
So it's,
asked for 12. or,
Yeah, I
you
think
know.
the 1,700 square feet would be of the public safety building that would require renovation
Right.
for the
In
connection.
order
But the
to-
new building would be 13,400
Yeah.
square feet.
that's correct.
And if you have those pros and cons sheets, that would be great to get those, now, if we can get those.
Yeah, that we don't have, if you
Yeah.
don't mind
That's
sending
correct.
us, and we'll
I'll
include
forward
that. Scott, are you referring to this layout?
Yeah, it would be great to, like we had earlier, I remember months ago, we had actual, just floor plans that kind of showed square footage and, whether it was the mayor's office or your office or, whatever we were doing. I think it would be helpful to see what those, what we're planning to add, change, or delete, because we are almost doubling the square footage.
So, yeah, so that is in the current packet.
It is,
It's
the
ju-
floor
I think
plan's in
we're
there?
gonna have to zoom in a little bit, because
Okay.
it's,
Yeah, now that we're narrowed it down, I wanted everything on one sheet, but I've got that for you. I'll
Great.
put it all together.
kind of
I'll
make
send
it
to you.
bigger.
The parking, yeah, the lot layout with that would be helpful too,
Yes, sir.
like we're building a new house.
All right. Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And also a cost difference if we do remove the balcony. I think that would be something that would be interesting just to see.
I
what-
agree, if it's not a priority to have a space serve as a future event space, and what changes can we do?
You know, maybe
Can we
we
make
could
to that?
do like sometimes we'll do like a lean square footage and then nice to have. square
Yeah,
footage.
yeah, I think that would be good to,
And then, of course, obviously this team, they very creative and can manage anything in between and all the above, right?
Can always change a floor plan.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have debris. Now we move on to trash. So we are going to continue our discussion of yard debris collection policy.
So we talked about this at a past meeting, and the thought was to pause for a little bit, get through the summer, and then reignite the discussion at the committee, and then bring this before city council in October. So we just wanted to give you all an opportunity to discuss it. If there's anything that has come up since the last time we talked about establishing a new policy for miscellaneous and yard debris on the island, and trying to find ways to try to minimize the amount of time that sometimes yard debris is placed on the right-of-way, and improve aesthetics. Also, to certainly improve the efficiencies of our public works department. And we talked a little bit about limiting the quantity of yard debris that the city would be collecting, and again, trying to manage some of these larger piles that oftentimes take our staff a lot of time to collect. So I highlighted the two sections that generated some discussion and concerns about from the committee the last time we discussed it, about the quantity that would be allowed. And we talked about 2 96-gallon containers and create an exemption for leaf bags. Also, the timing, back to, we want to improve the aesthetics, and one way to do that is limit how long a pile of debris can be placed before collection. So if we establish a schedule, do we want to have some restrictions about when the public may be placing that before collections, and try to do something similar to what we do with garbage and recycling. And there were some concerns about those folks that would be having service during the week, and whether or not they would be working on the weekends, and if that's a good policy or not. I wanted to just hear more from the committee, and see if there's any other changes that we would like to see before we present this discussion to full council at the workshop next month.
So just anecdotally, I'd like to share the fact that I just hired somebody to trim my trees in Mount Pleasant. And they are, the same exact company was trimming trees on Forest Trail, and they just simply trimmed the trees and left the trash on the side of the road for us to pay for. And when I hired them to trim my trees in Mount Pleasant, my invoice contained a debris removal line. So all these companies are very used to dealing with removing their own debris. And they've realized that when they come out to the Isle of Palms, now some of them do remove their own debris, but the more savvy ones, I think, have realized that we'll take it away for them for free. So the residents are paying for that, as opposed to, I mean, obviously the person who's having the debris removal done is going to end up paying for it. But to me, that seems more fair than, for instance, me sharing in the cost of my neighbor's debris removal. So I just thought that was really interesting. And my only comment to the highlighted is that I do think it's going to be really hard to ask people to put the yard debris out the day before. Like that, I feel like that's very challenging.
Well, part of and so to that point, Katie, I mean, I think the word is definitely out that we take anything and everything on the edge of the road. And I think you have those that are kind of doing it by the book, and if they trim your trees on the Isle of Palms and they know that we'll take it, they leave that debris. But then I think there's also those that are not charged, or they're charging it in Mount Pleasant, then bringing it over here and pushing it out on the Isle of Palms, because the word is just out that we will just take anything and everything. And part of, when we were talking through, we hear a lot about why is that pile out so long? Why is that pile out so, and it goes back to the volume. And we think that, if we don't put a date, that we'll still have piles out. Maybe not quite as long as they are now, but you'll still kind of see piles put out Saturday that don't get picked up till Thursday, which is part of what we're hearing about. And I think our thought was, if it's so limited, I mean, it's only 2 96-gallon, I mean, that's kind of driving this whole thing, is it's gonna be a very limited amount, so you're not hauling out. If it's a ton of
But the
limbs,
fact of the matter is, you cannot, if it rains, if you have paper leaf bags, which is what you have to have, and we can't have containers for yard debris. I mean, yard debris has to be in the paper leaf bags. If you have paper leaf bags that are full and sitting, say, over where you keep your trash cans, and it rains, you cannot move them, period.
so maybe
don't move.
the leaf bag, maybe the leaf bag is an exemption from the quantity. Maybe that's
I
also an
just- I don't
exemption from
think-
The placement.
the
yeah.
placement.
I think
date.
that if we get rid of the extreme, huge amounts that are taking the city so much time, and, I mean, for instance, the ones on my street that have been there for 2 weeks now, if we get rid of that, and we just tell people that we are going to pick up at this street on this day, a lot of people will put them out beforehand, but if someone puts it out on a Saturday and it's gone on a Wednesday, that's not
Not nearly the
that's
problem
not
we
the
have
problem.
today.
The problem we have is the stuff that sits out there for weeks at a time because a yard company just came and trimmed, 5 oak trees and 20 palms, and it takes y'all, a ridiculous amount of time, which is, it's not fair to the public works and people that are getting frustrated that it's sitting for so long. I mean, I think that if we had a reasonable limit and we could stick to an actual schedule, that I feel like that would solve the
That might
problem.
be, if we do that step and then we still have problems, we could
Then we could
kind of
always- yeah.
go back and have another lever if we need it.
Could we maybe at the next committee meeting, I would like to see the Mount Pleasant policy, because I've been out to their site and I've kind of looked at it, and, I think to your point, Katie, they've got some policies that are a little different than what we have, and I think their leaf bags are exemptions. Because I know that, people do mow their lawns or whatever, or they have a service come in, those leaf bags they're staying out in the front yard for more than one day before the trash pickup. So I think they're exempted. I think they've got a fairly workable and close to what we have with minor modifications policy that we might want to take a look at, and then maybe talk to Robert and Donnie and say, hey, does this help mitigate the importing of yard debris from other municipalities, and kind of get their take on, hey, if we were to implement this, what would that give us what we need, without necessarily inconveniencing all of the residents on the island with having to put something out the day before, or schedule their yard people to come the day before, or do their own yard work the day before. I think they've got a fairly workable, fair policy, and I think instead of trying to reinvent the wheel and figure this out, we might want to take a look at theirs and just go down and say, yep, that works, that doesn't, this does.
Yeah, and I mean, to that point, as a practical matter, I lived in Mount Pleasant for a long time. I mean, when I moved into my house, my father and I cut like a ton of trees and had a pile so high that you could not see my house. And they did come and take it away, and nobody complained, and, I mean, Mount Pleasant is very good about that, but the contractors seem to know that they gotta take their own,
They do.
they have to haul their own
do.
stuff away.
I
So-
do think I think that is the difference, and I think that we kind of tried approaching this the first time with just separating it by, if it's a contractor, they have to take it away, if it's a homeowner, we'll take it. But I
To me,
think that didn't.
seems like,
I-
to me, that seems like the
easier of the, and I
Yeah.
think we didn't go down that route just because of, who generated the amount of debris is almost indifferent. And it is hard. A big pile shows up, it's very hard to police who exactly brought that, who didn't. But I feel like that's kind of where we started, and we've pivoted to just going after quantity.
Well, a couple of years ago, there was an effort to go down that route and just require contractors to take their own debris, and I think that there were concerns about that was going to be passed on to the resident who pays for the service, and it just didn't it was not embraced by full council at that time. And maybe that's the first, we can reevaluate that, and that's a first step, and see how much of an efficiency that generates for the Public Works Department without regulating any yard debris and miscellaneous. But I think to your point, we were looking at if a resident generates, that same amount of trash, it's really the issue, right? Is how much time does it take for Public Works to
But
collect that?
in reality, these yard companies that have sometimes 10, 15 people working and, 8 chainsaws and,
Generating
cherry
more.
pickers. I mean, it doesn't matter how hard I work on my yard, I'm never getting that much yard debris. Like
In a week.
Yeah,
In a year, you
exactly.
might
And
go.
so, and I know people are gonna say, oh, well, how do you know? How do you regulate it? And I was like, all I can tell you is that when I've hired people in Mount Pleasant to either, I had people take out a shed and they charged me to haul it to the dump, and then I've got people trimming my trees as we speak, and they're, and so that, they, somehow Mount Pleasant is figuring this out, and they have a lot more people, and they are somehow enforcing it. So I feel like, obviously, you're gonna have a couple people that are gonna fall through the cracks and, not follow the rules, but I feel like,
Yeah.
for the most part, the people that have business licenses out here will,
Yeah, to your point, right now, it's fully okay, legal, embraced by our city to take it all away. So they're not doing anything
yeah.
cavalier or wrong.
No,
It's
it would
like,
be, it would be.
your
It'd be
community-
a bad business decision
yeah,
for them.
to not do it, so.
And I don't know, there's a way, I think half our trash and debris are about equal, aren't they? What we haul off as far as volume, I don't know that there's that much difference. So the debris is, it's a big portion, and if we were to be able to cut that by 10%, 20%, or whatever it is, by not doing this, there could be some real benefits to for us.
Yeah,
How does Mount Pleasant deal with storms?
I don't know. I mean, they
That's
probably have
something
a,
we need to look at that as well, is how they deal with storms. The only other thing, from Donnie's perspective, is if we do this, I'm not saying not to do this, but if we do this, that takes a load off y'all. But then what happens when we have a hurricane? Do you have the equipment necessary to haul stuff
So
away?
we fall underneath the Charleston County disaster contract.
and I think.
So they come and haul everything off then?
Yeah,
Well, let me clarify. If there is a disaster declaration, we would be included in the county's emergency debris removal contract, and they would assign resources to Ala Palms to collect trash. That only happens when there is a FEMA declared disaster, and that debris removal is an eligible expense. That hasn't happened in the last 2, but it has happened before. Recognizing that, the city last year entered into a separate contract with that same contractor that would allow us to activate them if we wanted to do that, regardless of what the county decides to do if it's not declared by FEMA. But if that doesn't happen, then our staff currently collects all yard debris. Starting last year, we do have a subcontractor that helps Donnie's folks collecting yard debris post-storm. So we have those sort of three different options. And I think Mount Pleasant, I'm just guessing, but probably does the same. We'll contract it out depending on the volume.
I think we could easily put in some sort of exception for,
And it
Yeah, I
includes
think-
it. The
Yeah.
policy
Yeah.
includes
That,
that.
is that in our, I know we talked about, all bets kind of being off after a storm in terms of controlling your quantity.
I believe, didn't
I
we
know-
include it?
But then somebody's got to then figure out what's a big storm.
Yeah,
Maybe you punt that to
Yeah.
council, I don't know.
Well, we can, FEMA's threshold is a named storm. If it's a named storm and there is a local disaster declaration, maybe that could be our threshold.
I think I think we would want to do that. An
Yeah.
exemption for a
I think so,
storm,
too. Yeah.
recognize it.
Yeah.
All right, so we are,
So we're gonna pull up how town of
Mount
Mount Pleasant does it, modify to include an exemption for storms. What else do we need on this item?
Would you all like to go back and explore the idea of starting with a requirement of contractors? Taking,
I feel like
Taking-
that's the most logical first step. I
I
mean, I
think-
really do think that's just the,
I think that is tied in, I think that is the Mount Pleasant model, so I think I was considering those.
the two.
Is that right, Don?
It is.
Mount Pleasant,
Yeah, but remember, the biggest difference for me between Mount Pleasant or any other of the municipalities around is their ability to have a transfer site where we have to haul directly to the landfill. That has to be considered.
Explain that.
yeah.
that makes them
So,
better able to deal with big piles, right?
so you're talking about efficiencies, and Mount Pleasant can get their debris up quicker. The reason is they can haul their debris to Owendale or 6 Mile, dump it, and then they have a cherry picker that's separating and putting it in 18-wheelers and hauling it to the dump. Whereas on the Isle of Palms, residents separated on the street, we have no transfer site. We have to haul directly to the landfill or Palmetto Commerce.
So
That's a
you
huge
use-
difference in efficiency.
And what
you
is
use lot- You use
separated?
Lot B as a transfer site during hurricane.
During major events,
Couple
we've used
times.
it before.
Correct.
It's not a,
So that I understand.
What is
Thank you.
being separated? Yard debris from other debris, or,
So your shed that you tore down, you kept separate from yard debris. In Mount Pleasant, they commingle and they haul it in those flatbeds to a transfer site. It's dumped. They have a subcontractor, and she can clarify with her counterpart, but at one time they had a subcontractor that was contracted to separate the yard debris from the washing machines, from the wood, and put it into 18-wheelers, and that subcontract hauled it to the landfill.
because it has to be separated at the landfill. When it
has
gets
to
to
be
the landfill, it
when
has
it-
to, correct.
Correct.
So that's another example of how they have a tighter policy, but they have the ability to even run more efficiently than we do. So we're kind of like 2 or 3 balls behind the 8 ball.
No, I think, so their policy would not be tighter, it would be looser, because they can
They can
just throw it
allow
all
for more.
together.
Right.
But they don't allow contractors to push they don't have the huge piles, correct?
Well, they do have huge piles. I think the contractors, they present a contract, and it's negotiated between the homeowner and the contractor as to haul it away or not. That's just,
So you do think they have the ability, well, we'll figure this out.
Yeah.
if you got someone that's a Douglas Kerr or Donnie Pitts, we're not gonna pay to have them haul it off if we can get away with it.
I can
mean,
tell you that I asked,
we're
I
few
can
and
tell
far
you that
between.
I
Ask, Katie.
asked those questions, I asked that question specifically in Mount Pleasant when I had my shed torn down, and my contractor told me, absolutely not. If we're doing it, you're paying me to take it to the dump. We cannot put it in front of your house.
I don't think we're ever gonna solve people trying to skirt,
I mean, but I asked the question in Mount Pleasant, and I was told no. Because I said, when I lived here, I put everything out, and they always took it away. And the contractor said, well, that was you, and this is me, and, I'm not gonna lose my license over it, which,
Okay. Well, we'll drill down on what they will and won't allow.
so are you telling us, though, that we need to have like a separate day for yard debris versus non-yard debris? No?
No, you
Okay.
just know that the residents on the Isle of Palms have to keep their trash separated.
It would be nice if it
Whereas other municipalities, they have a little bit, because they have transfer sites.
So maybe that's just an educational thing. Is that we need
Well, I
to-
don't think we would change that. We would still require yard.
You still
abuse.
want people to have it
Correct.
separated,
Yes.
but
It'd just be a matter of the volume that would be allowed for
Right.
people to pull out for.
So right now,
collection.
today, if there's a mixed pile, then I deliberately will not get it. And they'll call me, and you have to separate. You can't have chain link fence in with your yard debris. You have to separate it on the street, and it's been going on for 19, 20 years that I'm aware of.
And we do think education is a big part of getting the pot. We do think that happens, where somebody puts something out that can't be collected.
and they just don't know.
And they don't know, and so it kind of sits there until somebody calls.
Right.
So part of this will, regardless of which strategy we embrace, any of it's going to have to be, kind of have a public outreach component.
Which is always a challenge.
So what we can do is bring some of the information that we discussed about needing and wanting to see to the next committee meeting before we put it, bounces back to council. So we
Yeah,
have a
maybe
little,
that-
we
Yeah,
have
one more
another
cycle,
stab,
yeah.
another stab at this at the committee level,
Yeah.
next month, and then we'll
Yeah.
see
that
where
sounds
we
good.
are before putting to council.
More trash.
More trash now.
All right, let's see. New business. Discussion of charging a garbage collection fee based on the number of cans. These are the rollaway cans. So this would be household debris, not yard debris, and not like random stuff. This is your bags of trash. And I believe that Blair brought this up when we were talking about the commercial businesses and all the yard debris, and then Donnie was telling us that there's some houses that have as many as, did you say 20, 18, 20 rollaway cans?
Well, you got 8 to 10 of your green cans, and you would have
Donnie.
equal that number of your, 8 to 10 of your green regular garbage cans, and you'd have that many in your blue recycle. So, for instance, and I could give a specific there, but I'm aware of several homes on Ocean Boulevard that have 16, 18 cans total.
Of which we just collect half, right?
County- 'cause
the
The
county's getting
recycling
the blue.
is collected by the county.
Correct.
So what would be the average house on Isle of Palms? How many do they have? How many, the brown, whatever color, they are,
blue.
green?
No,
the
green.
The
Green and
sorry.
blue.
Average
Excluding
of the
recycling.
3,500?
I mean, just ballpark it.
Well, I would say the average is going to be around 3. Because you got to consider all of your wild dunes, which has 2 or 1. So it's going to skew that average down some. But if I can show you particular routes like the Ocean Boulevard route, the Palm Boulevard route on Tuesday. They're going to be heavy garbage and heavy recycle.
But we're not, we as a city aren't concerned about recycling,
No.
right? I mean,
No,
we're
but
not paying any of that.
Those particular routes where you have the businesses, if you will, are going to be much heavier than really even Forest Trail and a lot of wild dunes.
People that are not renting the house, average is less than 2?
2 to 3.
2 or less?
2 to 3,
2 to
yes.
3.
2 to 3 garbage or garbage and recycling?
Garbage,
Even if they're not renting,
correct.
I only have one.
yeah. And I use,
I don't even fill
mine's
mine.
never full.
I know.
Well, I guess if you got a family of 5 or 6.
I have 5.
Okay, yeah, we're only one
think
too.
you have
I mean,
one.
we're
Okay.
one as a permanent resident.
I feel like I should have more.
Is,
And barely fill it, yeah.
I think 2 is already in our code as kind of a magic number. I mean, if the committee is looking for kind of a bright
'cause
line
that's-
of what is
It says for
abnormal.
commercial, right?
Yeah,
If
2,
you can keep
it's
it
not really
under-
related to exactly what you're talking about, but 2 is in there as when you go above that, you're kind of into the higher.
Doesn't it, I think it says something along the lines of the city can require you to get a
Get a
dumpster,
dumpster.
basically.
Correct, if you generate more than 2 within the regular garbage schedule.
Are y'all able to give us a proposal on anybody that wants more than 2 trash cans? It's gonna cost X number of dollars a year. And that's something that we could collect. with the
Resident,
Business.
Non-resident, I mean,
Any-
rental, resident,
Doesn't matter.
doesn't matter?
Yeah, cross the board, if you have more than.
More than 2, you're gonna
What's it
pay.
gonna cost? Yeah.
Have to scratch our head on how to.
You know, one of the,
Well, I was going to say, is that a math equation that basically says, look, we know how many, you know how many cans we've got across the island. You take the number of
Yeah.
households, whatever, take 2 out of it, you've got your remaining cans, and how much debris are we generating on a per can basis? We know how much it costs to haul it off. You can figure out what the fee needs to be, yeah.
I feel
I mean,
like
that's
you can
that's
work
just a-
backward fairly.
Yeah, that's a quick math equation.
And that, to me, it's fairer just to say you get 2 across the board than it would be to single out people that have business licenses.
And the objective is to just cover the cost,
Yeah.
yeah. We could figure that out.
Yeah, I think it's easy to figure out who has more than 2. The challenge is the mechanism
The
to
charging.
collect, to collect.
I mean, we could add it to a business license, no problem, on an annual basis, but then for people that
residents,
don't
it's
have a
harder.
business license, it would just have to be like a stormwater kind of fee. It'd be a separate fee, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and that's on our tax bill.
it would be on the tax bill, and that would be coordinated through Charleston County. The mechanism, I don't think it's that complicated, but some of the commentary that we've received since the committee last discussed this was most of the trash that is generated by these large homes that have more than 2 happens during the season. You know, are we gonna make a distinction? You know, that's a question, right? You know, maybe in the off-season, and Donnie, could you speak to that? Is that true?
Yeah,
The
it's-
people who have 9 to 10 cans, do they generate that much trash throughout the year, or is just only a few months out of the year?
It certainly goes down, and you can look at historical garbage,
Sure.
and you can see those trends. And so the island is seasonal. Although there is now somewhat of a secret season or,
It's getting longer and longer.
correct.
You're gonna have holidays and house parties and
Yeah,
weddings.
New Year's Eve,
But,
Christmas.
just
but
don't
you
know.
still go down from 400 tons a month in the height of the season to 168, 200 tons during the off seasons. And you can look at the charts from 18, 20 years, and
It's pretty
you can see
consistent.
it's very consistent.
We could assume February is just residents, and then kind of other months, that's a visitor.
February is the calm before the storm.
Yeah.
But you can
And
still
Because
do
it
as
starts
Scott-
in March.
As Scott suggested, but it's doing on an annual basis, use annual numbers and figure it
Yeah,
out.
and I think, maybe the numbers we're looking for is, we know that condos have dumpsters.
Some of them.
Some of them have dumpsters. We can, we know how many housing units we've got. If Donnie, you know how many green cans we got across the entire island, all we gotta do is know that number, take the number of non-dumpster units we've got, multiply that by 2, subtract it, and we got how many cans we got over the 2. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. If we know how many green ones we got out there. First question is, how many green cans do we have on the island?
And
Yeah.
those
And we should, hopefully we
cans
know that.
are provided, you have to pay for them, right? If you get more than?
You get one
Yeah, you
and
pay
you
one
pay
time.
for another
It's a
one.
one-time.
It's $75.
And who is that?
That's
How
a
is
one-time
how is
fee.
that paid?
They
Is
pay
that-
the city.
They just pay the city.
They come to City Hall, they order it. Donnie has a schedule, and if we have them on stock, it gets delivered and they pay us.
And that obviously just covers the cost of.
Just a
can
can.
itself.
Right.
And
There's no-
Well, no, I mean, if half of that number is above the 2, then we know where the opportunity is, or the issue
But
is.
you are saying that the billing question is not insurmountable? I mean, because like, for instance, the city that I have dealt with where I was charged for debris, it went through the water bill. Because the city water was connected, and so that that's how they billed it. So I'm
They
wondering.
already had a utility.
Exactly.
A billing
And we
system.
don't have
We don't have that. Most communities that I know of already charge in their tax bill a garbage collection fee. the city pays for that service through the general fund revenue, which includes property tax bills, building permits, business license, so the main general fund. So I know that this is done, and most communities actually charge $20, $34, a fee regardless of.
For everybody.
Just everybody. And whether it's based on, I don't think it's based on volume, that may be complicated, but that is pretty standard in some communities.
I just foresee the challenge of, I mean, somebody's gonna have to day-to-day, a can, somebody gets 2 cans delivered, somebody else sells a house, it was 5 cans, now I mean, somebody is gonna have to
Track that.
track that, tie it into a tax bill. From my perspective, I'm scratching my head about how, if we want to go with a granular, your house is getting charged $55 extra per can per year. Mechanically, I don't know how we're going to do that, but.
Why don't we
we'll
first
work on it.
just find out where we are? Maybe that, and then we can
Yeah.
figure out the model on what's the most efficient, fair way to even address Blair's
Yeah.
project.
Yeah, the administration of it, I didn't mean to say that was simple. It was more, there's a mechanism already
For
sort of in
billing.
place that we could do it, but yeah, tracking who generates more and has more
'Cause they-
throughout the year.
Because the guy in the truck is gonna be the one who has to say, I picked up 6 cans from 127 Ocean.
Yeah, well, and what started this is our whole deal with dumpsters. And if we start charging people for dumpsters, but we don't charge businesses if they use a green can, well, that's not fair either. And so, we need to kind of
Well, we,
include all of that. And if businesses are not going to get free trash pickup, it shouldn't matter if it's a green can or a dumpster. Businesses shouldn't get free trash pickup, period, if that's what you're going to do. We have to be consistent across the board with it. So was the original big issue.
Well, here's, Donnie, I'm not going to speak for you, but
Go for it.
I'm your right-hand guy, So we're looking at, I think this year, replacing all the cans anyway, because we're looking at new equipment. And Donnie educated me on, and Robert, on the whole, possibility, and I think they do this in other municipalities, it's just you barcode your, you know how many cans you got out there and where they are, kind of thing. So you almost can automate a lot of this stuff, and that tracks into the location, the address, the billing, that gives us all kinds of flexibility if we got the count per household. And
You just put barcodes on.
yeah, you just replace, it's like going to the grocery store.
Barcodes on the new cans?
Look at your recycling cans that you have in your yard. They're all barcoded.
well, and I think that's a good point. We'll have an opportunity when we're facing that transition of the new garbage cans in thirds. So we're gonna do this third of the island first, so that we can just automate it. I don't know the quality of maybe the reporting that we have so far on the number of trash cans that we have. We haven't looked at that yet,
Yes.
but.
Some municipality weighs every arm, right? I mean, they tie, each time they collect, they weigh it, and then that generates a
All that can be
bill.
Yeah,
I can tell you in Lacey, Washington, you pay for your wet garbage, which is your household garbage. Your recycling and all, they'll pick up for free, but you pay and they weigh it on the trucks,
What happens to if you put wet garbage in that can?
You're paying for it.
paying for it.
They know.
You go to jail.
Go to jail.
But when we're changing cans over, that should be a simple
Yeah,
time
that's
what
for
I'm
all
saying.
of it. And then if my house has 3 cans, well, that goes to the tax bill, and I got 3 cans until such time as I turn a can in.
Yeah.
And I think, do we have to, before we order these cans, make sure we get, whether we use them or not, I don't think a barcode's gonna cost a whole lot of money to have them barcoded, or do we have to,
And-
we have
and
to
the same-
designate them, or are they already gonna have it?
and the
That
same
would cover it.
company that produces those cans offer the services to deliver, account them, and, right? I mean, that's
Yeah, that was
a,
just a simple option to have them deploy them, build them, inventory.
remove the old ones, so
And
that's.
the barcode was really just an add-on to the cans. It was an
Yeah.
option to get it, so.
I feel like we should
Can't
definitely.
use the barcode to measure dumps, can you?
The truck itself will measure.
But not Katie's property had 45 dumps.
That I do not know.
Probably can. It's back
But if you,
there.
Yeah, I
if
mean-
you, but if you had, I mean, I feel like it's the simplest way to do it is, like I think you were saying, is so like, when we get these new cans, I'm gonna get one.
Correct.
So you just, nobody ever has to think about me, because I'm just gonna have one.
Well, we would be, we would
But-
be replacing the exact
Right,
number
and
that is
so-
out
and
there
it would have a
today.
barcode on it and everything else. But if I asked for 3, then my third is, I'm gonna get billed for it yearly. So if I have 3, I'm getting, every year, I'm gonna get an extra bill for my third,
Until you turn it back in.
until I, right.
You ask for 3, you're gonna pay for 2.
Well, you
Or
pay for
pay for
the,
what? We're saying we're gonna give people what, 2 for free.
We don't
So
know
I'm
yet,
a-
yeah.
well, or whatever, yeah.
All right.
So
We solved that problem.
I think that's a good start. When is that starting?
we're looking at submitting a PO in the next month or two.
So we'll take the option for the barcode? Is that kind of
Yeah,
what I'm
we
hearing?
can,
Yeah.
we'll
Okay.
include that in the PO. We have $100,000 for the first phase of garbage can replacement. So, we would want to include within that budgeted number, the ability to have the company build them, deploy them, and create the inventory, so that's not something.
Are these new cans gonna be more raccoon-proof?
No.
Identical cans.
Same,
exact
same,
can.
same exact
Same
can?
can.
Okay.
Total as
Actually-
amount with.
Yeah.
Actually, they're a little less because they don't have a lock like the older style
They're just the flap ones, yeah,
with the black top.
okay.
But back to Desiree's point about the 20 years of trying to keep up with those cans, that number, as we've eliminated cans from condominiums, Seagrove and such, those cans, some of which could have been deployed on the island and not recorded.
Yeah.
So,
Can
We
gets
could have some-
destroyed, you guys don't then.
yes,
go
we
back
try to
and
keep
report?
up with
You
it,
do?
but at the same time, over a 20-year, not hard number,
You don't seem too confident.
Desiree is right on target.
Ballpark is fine.
We could have some illegal cans out there, some,
Absolutely.
Quite a few.
but when it comes to the condos that we've switched over to dumpsters, if they had cans, it would still just be probably 1 per unit, right? Like one condo unit.
No, the Mariners Walk, each one of those buildings, each unit had 2 cans.
2, okay.
So
But nobody
there's
would,
about 12 cans per corral before I eliminated them.
but none of those condo units had more than 2 cans.
No.
Okay. And so that's what we're thinking of that being our limit, so they'd still fall within the limit. So, does that make sense?
See,
All right. Next order of business would be the next meeting, October 1st. Is that good with everybody? 9 o'clock?
Sure.
motion
All
to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Off the record.